The sound I wanted to be the anthem of my backyard was the laughter of my children. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, and my 5-year-old son, Ben, were balls of pure energy, and my wife and I had promised them a real, honest-to-goodness swing set for the summer. Not just a slide, but the whole 9 yards, swings that could touch the sky, a little fort, maybe even a rock wall. It was the centerpiece of a perfect suburban childhood, and our tidy backyard in the Summerfield Meadows subdivision seemed like the ideal stage. Summerfield Meadows was marketed as a family-friendly community, a phrase plastered on the glossy brochures and the large sign at the entrance. The reality was a bit more complex. While it was full of families, it was also governed by a homeowners association with an iron will and a 3-inch thick book of rules. The enforcer of that will, particularly when it came to yards and outdoor aesthetics, was Ms. Peterson. Ms. Peterson lived 2 houses down. Her yard was a masterpiece of horticultural control, a silent, green, and perfectly sterile landscape where not a single blade of grass dared to be out of place. She was the head of the Grounds and Beautification Committee, and she took the beautification part to mean the systematic elimination of anything that hinted at the messy reality of life, especially life with children. She saw a well-loved soccer ball as a blemish and a rogue dandelion as a declaration of war. A swing set, I suspected, would be viewed as a weapon of mass destruction aimed at her property values. Knowing this, I didn't rush out and buy the first playset I saw. I became a student of the HOA. I downloaded the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, and spent 2 evenings with a highlighter and a pot of coffee. I searched for every conceivable keyword: swing set, play equipment, structure, yard accessory. What I found was nothing. There were no specific rules at all prohibiting or even governing children's play equipment. The document was filled with vague, sweeping clauses about maintaining the aesthetic harmony of the community, preventing nuisances, and a catch-all rule that any exterior structure or alteration required approval from the Architectural Review Committee, ARC, which Ms. Peterson also sat on. It was a gray area the size of a football field, and I knew she would try to use that ambiguity as a weapon. To show good faith, I decided to get ahead of it. I chose a beautiful, sturdy cedar swing set, tasteful, wooden, and a far cry from the neon plastic monstrosities. I drafted a polite, formal letter to the ARC. I included the manufacturer's spec sheet, the exact dimensions, a satellite photo of my yard with the proposed location clearly marked in a spot minimally visible from the street, and a copy of the non-existent rule about swing sets. I wasn't asking for permission so much as providing a courtesy notification that I was acting within the written rules. I mailed it off and, not wanting to lose the summer, purchased the set. The assembly was a joyous weekend project. Lily and Ben helped by handing me bolts and offering strategic advice. Their excitement was electric. When the final swing was hung, their shrieks of pure delight echoed through the yard. That sound, I thought, was the very definition of community harmony. Ms. Peterson disagreed. The following Tuesday, she appeared at the edge of my property, holding a clipboard like a scepter. "Mr. Jennings," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "That is a rather substantial structure." "It's a swing set, Ms. Peterson," I said with a friendly smile. "The kids love it. Did you get my letter?" "The committee is reviewing your notification," she said, putting air quotes around the word. "But you should know that such installations are generally discouraged. You really should have waited for a formal, written approval before proceeding with construction." The unspoken threat hung in the air: tear it down. 2 days later, the official shot across the bow arrived. A crisp white envelope from the HOA was in my mailbox. Inside was a notice of violation. It claimed the swing set violated Article 5, Section 2, Public Nuisance, and Article 7, Section 4, Aesthetic Harmony. It demanded the unapproved structure be removed within 14 days and levied an initial fine of $50, which would increase by $25 for every day of non-compliance thereafter. My blood began to simmer. This was exactly the kind of baseless overreach I had anticipated. I sat down that evening and composed my response. It was firm, factual, and polite. I quoted the CC and RS back to them, pointing out the complete lack of any specific rule I had violated. I argued that the laughter of children in a family-friendly neighborhood could not be reasonably defined as a nuisance. I stated that aesthetics were subjective and that a tasteful wooden playset did not detract from them. I concluded by respectfully refusing to remove the swing set or pay the baseless fine. I sent it via certified mail. The HOA's response was a declaration of war. A second letter arrived, this one from the HOA's management company. It was thick with legalese. It informed me that my appeal was denied and that a mandatory, covenant violation hearing had been scheduled for me at the next monthly board meeting. The fines, it helpfully noted, were now accumulating daily and stood at $175. Okay, I said to my wife, holding the letter. They want a fight. Let's give them one. My preparation for that hearing was meticulous. I put together a binder that would have made a trial lawyer proud. It contained our complete correspondence, the relevant, and non-relevant, sections of the CC and RS, and beautiful, sun-drenched photos of my kids playing happily on the swing set. But I didn't stop there. I went online and researched my state's property laws concerning HOAs. I found what I was looking for, a section in the state code that stipulated that HOA restrictions must be reasonable and cannot forbid activities traditionally associated with residential family life without explicit, clear language in the covenants. A blanket denial of a playset could be seen as unreasonable. My final piece of ammunition was the most powerful. I walked the neighborhood and spoke to the other families with young children. I explained the situation, and the response was overwhelming. A quiet frustration with Ms. Peterson and the HOA's arbitrary enforcement had been simmering for years. Within 2 days, I had a petition with 25 signatures from homeowners in Summerfield Meadows, all stating their support for my swing set and affirming that they viewed it as a positive addition to the community. The night of the hearing, the clubhouse meeting room was cold and smelled of industrial cleaner. The 5 board members sat at a long table, looking somber. Ms. Peterson was there, sitting next to the board president, her files neatly stacked, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. She presented her case first. She spoke of the intrusive verticality of the structure. She lamented the potential for noise pollution. She painted a grim picture of declining property values and the precedent it would set. If we allow this, she concluded, her voice grave, what's next? Trampolines. Treehouses. Our neighborhood's carefully curated character will be eroded. Then, it was my turn. I walked to the podium, placed my binder down, and looked each board member in the eye. Good evening, I began. My name is Mark Jennings. I'm here because I believe my family is being unfairly targeted and fined for an activity that is not only reasonable but is a cornerstone of a family-friendly community, the very thing Summerfield Meadows claims to be. I walked them through my case, step by step. I showed them that no specific rule had been broken. I countered the nuisance claim with the simple truth that the sound of happy children is not noise pollution. Then I presented the petition. Ms. Peterson spoke about the character of the neighborhood. Here are the signatures of 25 of our neighbors who believe my children's swing set enhances that character. I slid a copy down the table. The board members looked at the list of names, and I could see a subtle shift in their posture. Ms. Peterson was not speaking for the community, she was speaking for herself. Finally, I played my trump card. I also want to make the board aware of our state's laws, I said calmly. The law requires HOA restrictions to be reasonable. Forbidding a standard children's play set in a community marketed to families, without any specific rule in our governing documents, could be seen by a court as an unreasonable restriction. I truly hope we can resolve this here, as a community, without having to explore that. The message, though polite, was crystal clear. I had the support of the neighbors, and I had the law on my side. The room was silent. Ms. Peterson's face was pale with fury. She had expected an emotional, unprepared parent. She got a calm, organized opponent who had done his homework. The board president looked at Ms. Peterson. "Janet, is there any rule you can point to, specifically, that mentions playsets?" "It falls under structures," she insisted. "But we approve decks, gazebos, and sheds that are far larger," a board member pointed out, looking at my petition. "It seems inconsistent to deny this." After a brief, tense discussion, they called for a vote. A motion to dismiss the violation notice and waive all fines for Mr. Jennings at 418 Willow Lane. One by one, 4 hands went up. The president made it 5. It was unanimous. Ms. Peterson looked as if she had swallowed a lemon. "We would, however," the president added, trying to offer her a small concession, "appreciate it if you would consider planting a screening shrub or 2 along the back fence, for privacy." "I think that's a reasonable request," I said with a genuine smile. "Consider it done." I walked out of that room feeling like I could wrestle a bear. The other parents in the audience gave me thumbs-ups and pats on the back. The next day, I received a formal letter confirming the board's decision. The swing set stayed. I even planted a row of fast-growing arborvitae along the back fence, a symbol of a hard-won peace. Ms. Peterson now averts her gaze when I see her. Her absolute authority has been challenged, and the neighborhood knows it. Now, when I'm in my yard, the sound I hear is exactly the one I always wanted, the carefree, soaring laughter of my children. It's the sound of joy, the sound of summer, and the sweet, sweet sound of a victory well earned.